Good evening and welcome to the January 9th, 2019 Traffic and Safety Board meeting. Roll call, Stoker, Hang,
Here.
Coda, here, Samuel Moore,
Here.
Maureen Moore,
Here.
and Chief Saravello.
Here.
Okay, next on the agenda is introductions of guests. So if there's any guest in the audience, please come forward and just state your name and then if applicable, your address if you're located in the city.
Andrew Johnson, 54 Park.
Thank you.
Pat Cawley with Transportation Improvement Association.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, next on the agenda is approval of minutes from December 6, 2018.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 6, 2018.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes from December 6, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is old business. Under item A is engine braking ordinance. This is a carryover from the December meeting about a question of the proposed ordinance.
Madam Chairperson, John Kingsup here, City Attorney, to answer any questions regarding this particular ordinance. I think there was some questions about it, as I recall, related to misdemeanors or citations being issued in the ordinance. And why I put that in there, knowing from a standpoint of being a prosecutor as well as a defense lawyer, that there is an inclination when you're dealing with businesses to take advantage of certain laws. And so we put in the ordinance citations or misdemeanors because there could be occasions in which particular companies continue to do this, different drivers might, from the same company. And if you have a history of doing that, then we ought to have the opportunity to issue the more stringent misdemeanor citations so they get the message. I think it would be rare on occasion, but that's why that was in there. Because there's been enough complaints about it that that we figured we ought to try to provide that protection.
Now, John, would that follow like progressive plan? So like a repeat offender start
Yeah,
out, kind of like some of the code enforcement now,
Right.
where there's a civil infraction,
Yeah.
1, 2, or 3 at that point if there's no correction.
Yeah, law enforcement would have to use their discretion on it.
But that's your intention with that, I
Yeah,
would
that's the whole intention of it.
Okay.
Have people get the message. And if this is passed by the council, it might be wise to send that to those companies that you know have an inclination to do that, just so you can have a record that management has been advised that this ordinance has been adopted. At this point, I have a hazy recollection on this because I got an email, and I can't recall when I got it, regarding one of the names that was used for this, and I can't remember which name is used for this type of braking, but someone had patented the name.
Oh, Jake braking.
Jake braking. That's in the ordinance. I may have to take that out of the ordinance. So I want to verify that, and that would be deleted from it, so we don't get a patent infringement suit.
I just, John, it just was a little bit confusing when you read this. It says any violation of this ordinance may be at the discretion of the enforcement officer or complainant.
Right.
And I guess I was just not understanding exactly what you were saying because it sounds like, well, they can decide, either the complainant or the officer could decide.
Not really,
what
because
they
a
want to
complaint,
do.
if a complainant is, if it's an individual, the law enforcement officers are going to exercise their discretion in that circumstance. If, on the other hand, it's law enforcement and they have records of a number of violations, and they'll exercise their discretion and act on it. So I just worded it that way. No citizen would have a right to insist that you go to a misdemeanor. That's a prosecutor's discretion. That's the officer's discretion. It's not the individual.
Okay. So then we can send this, this needs to go forward then to the council?
What
at
you
this
want
point?
to do is approve the ordinance, and have the record should indicate that the explanation was provided by council in this meeting, and you're moving that it be adopted by the city council, forwarded and adopted to the city council, with the edits that have been discussed tonight. And of course, obviously, I have to formulate that a little more as far as the section number and where in the ordinance are going to have it. And that's going to be the chief's discretion or else Rennis's discretion on where it goes in the ordinance.
Okay. And then we had the ordinance, a question on the ordinance. Didn't you too?
Yeah, but, so, John, I have a couple of other questions for you, not particularly on this, we've got this one taken care of now, I think, as far as what, the explanation we needed. So if you don't mind, I'd just like to cover a couple of the other issues while we got you, and,
On this, or
Do you
No.
want- Should we make,
pass, did you?
should we make a motion first to be able to
okay.
and do that one, then we can go to, if there's, is there any further discussions on item A, engine braking ordinance?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I think that was clear enough.
okay. Is there a motion?
Let me see if I've got something here I can use. It's the engine braking, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to accept the engine braking
Ordinance?
ordinance and to forward that to the council. And I want it indicated that all the questions have been answered on this ordinance to our satisfaction.
Okay, by the council. Okay. Is there a motion, a second motion?
I'll support.
Okay, all those in favor of accepting the ordinance and move forward to city council for their review, provided the explanation provided tonight by the city council, or the council tonight, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion has passed. Second underneath old business is Traffic and Safety Board, the ordinance.
Before we go into that, I want to mention one thing. We had done the special needs policy, which I think was adopted. And
Not
I just
yet.
want to bring to your attention, to emphasize this, that your hearings on any application, and I'm referring to subsection 7, hearing 7, subparagraph A. I put in there a standard. This is anyone coming before you on a request. It can be a resident, it can be on recommendation of the police department on certain changes being made. And I wanted to, I've always insisted that any administrative body in making a decision and hearing the facts and the substance of the petition has to demonstrate the rationale or the basis for the decision that's made. So in this the policy, I indicated that a requirement of any review to be considered shall require supporting documentation, so the applicant has to provide the supporting documentation in advance of any hearing before the Traffic and Safety Board. The decision to be made shall be based upon the presentation and documentation and accompanying the request being made. any action taken upon such interest shall contain in the motion the fact basis in support of that decision. So, you can hear the information that's presented. When you make the motion, you should probably refer to the documentation that has been considered for purposes of the motion that's being made, and then recite any of the facts in there. Why is that? Your decision is an administrative decision. An administrative decision has an appeal right. And I'll use myself an example. Let's say I went to the chief and I said, I want a traffic and safety order, and he says, no, we're not going to do it. Well, that means I have a right to still go before you and contest his decision denial and say I ought to have the right to do that. And I'll use the street that is next to the old port as an example. There's parking on both sides of the street now. So I'm a resident there, and I'm a senior citizen, and I literally am a senior citizen, way, way senior. And so I have trouble at night driving, and I see this two cars, lanes of cars on each side, when it ought to be really one lane. So I go to the chief and I say, I'd like you to put up an order or change that, and so it's only one lane of parking, not two. And he tells me to go fly a kite. Now, he wouldn't do that because he's a little more sophisticated. So that's my parlance.
Wow.
But he'd tell me, I'm not giving you. So I want to come before you, so I file a petition. You're an administrative body, you've got to hear that. So I come up and I tell you why, and I give you reasons why. Now, you can disagree with those reasons and deny my request. But if you, and the chief would be there, or someone from the police department to say why you should not grant my relief. That then provides the fact basis. So if you decide that you're going to go with the police department, then you have to state the rationale on why you are making that decision. Or if you go with me, you have to adopt the rationale that I presented as a fact basis for it. Any applicant that comes before you, any applicant, has to demonstrate facts that necessitate the relief that's being sought or requested of you. And that gives you the fact basis for your motion, because then when the motion is granted or denied, and I decide to take an appeal, I take it to the city council. And they are confined to that record that you made. They can't add anything more to it. They're confined to just that record. And they have to say yay or nay on my request. So that's the appeal process. It sort of works in an administrative setting, and you're in that now. So we're formalizing that so it absolutely follows the law, and the person who has the right to make the request is informed of why the request is denied. And so that, I just want to bring that to your attention, because I think that is in the policy, and I think it's been adopted by the council.
I have a question on that also. Oh,
Go ahead.
Go
is it
ahead.
okay?
We have a couple questions, actually.
That's fine.
So if it's been, can we still make a small change
Well, we
if
haven't
necessary?
reviewed this, so.
Yeah, I didn't think we had.
Well, I thought you had. Then I suggest you review this, hold your questions and review it, because you may have some more questions, and then at the next meeting.
No, John, I mean, we haven't reviewed this until this
Oh.
time. So we've reviewed this document
Okay,
now.
okay.
But not prior to this.
Okay.
My question, John, is on the, it's actually the last two pages on the special needs sign installation request.
Yes.
I'm bothered a little bit by the fact that, as it does tell the person in here in two places, I think it is, that their medical documentation can be read by our board and the police department and whoever else happens to become
In a
involved.
FOIA.
In the FOIA. There really isn't anywhere they sign for that particular information, because to me, that's pretty important that we make sure they have read and understood that.
I sort of noodled that, and I didn't want to complicate it. I think
How about like initialing? Just
you could initial,
at the spot on the,
yeah,
know where
you could initial. My concern is that, let's say that I am the applicant, and I have a lot of documentation. And for that reason, I don't want to furnish it publicly. So how do I present that? Well, that's really up to the applicant to figure out how they can do that. They can do it by a summary, a verbal summary, referring to a particular record, or just referring to documentation in my medical records of such and such a date. I want to tell you, here's what the findings were. And you can rely on that representation, because it really is intrusive if you make that a public record. So you have to rely on that. Now, you have to weigh the weight of that evidence that's given to you. Is it sufficient enough for you to make a decision? Is it clear enough for you to make a decision? Is the information, does it have a rational relationship to what my request is as far as the signage? Those are the considerations that you have to look at. And it's sort of, that's what your role is, making a determination that's fact-based. And fact-based on what the presentation is made, what's said in the presentation, what the response is to questions propounded to you, or that you propounded the applicant. So, we got to be sensitive in that area. There's a demonstrated right for my request for a sign, but there's also a lot of justification behind why I don't have to prove all the documentation that I have that justifies that. I should be able to verbalize it, and I should be able to do that under oath. That's the other thing, under oath.
Wouldn't we be covered with the signature on page 2 of the requester if prior to that on page 1, they're reading that clause about FOIA? And then when they sign on page 2 as the requester, isn't that the same as if they had read it? And then
let's
they're
see,
signing on
let me
page
get-
2, signature of requesting person, which comes after that clause of
Yeah.
the FOIA request?
Let me get to that.
It's the last 2 pages.
Yeah,
Which I think is what Maureen is referring
Yeah.
to as far as they understand what that clause means under FOIA?
Well, that and the fact that where they're actually signing is on a different page.
yeah, it
than
is
where-
on a different,
But that's one document together, correct?
yeah,
Yes,
that's
it
one
is.
document
I
altogether.
agree with it,
Yeah,
it's one
okay.
document.
But they're not signing.
Well, they're signing signature of requesting person here.
That does not necessarily mean them.
No, that's true.
They could be requesting on behalf of a neighbor
Yeah,
or something.
someone being a representative of them.
Right.
Right. I think I'd leave that in there because there may be a circumstance that requires that. Let's say you grant it later on and you find out the information's wrong. So then you file a freedom of information request. I think I'd leave it in there. I think that if there are questions asked about it, you say that's not automatic in the application process, but the need for demonstrated proof of the basis for the request should be in the application. And that's what you say.
But you don't feel that they should sign more in the place where this is stated
I
rather
don't
than
think
on
so.
Another page?
I don't think so, because it's part of the document.
You
So
think
it's
they'll
incorporated in
understand
it. So I would leave it just as it is. It's trying to make it simple here, because the concern is very legitimate when they come before you. Generally, it's some senior citizens or some citizens that have some localized issues dealing with their particular household or surrounding households. And so it's on a limited basis, and I don't think that really becomes factual. Now, that raises a question. I'm before you, and I'm representing someone, and I've demonstrated need for it, and you're not satisfied with it. So you ask me as their representative, well, will you produce the documents? And I would say, what protection are you going to give me that they're not made public?
Well, wouldn't the person only have to give the documents? It doesn't have to give all their medical documents. They could only give a
The
small.
documents that relate.
That relate to
That are
the,
related.
right.
But then again, they may be sensitive about it, you know. Because they don't want it public. They don't want their neighbors to know the detail of why they're asking for it. So that's what you're trying to look at. There's an element of sensitivity that has to be recognized by this, as well as an understanding that in general instances, the request is legitimate.
So this is just So that statement then, John, if I understand what you're saying, then is basically just an informative
Yeah.
statement?
It's, right, that's it, exactly. It's not going to be a requisite.
Okay.
Ah, well, that makes a big difference.
And I certainly will, well, you handle FOIA requests, don't you? Your department, outside of the clerk's office?
We do.
Then you know, when you get some request on an application for that there will be a denial. And I think what I ought to do is give you a legal opinion so you can rely on that legal opinion as a basis for your denial. So, if you agree with that, then at the end of this meeting, not necessarily tomorrow or the day after, or maybe next week, you might want to send me a letter saying, King Sep, do a legal opinion about the necessity of a FOIA request on the policy.
Fair enough.
And I can give you that, and you have that in your file.
Go ahead.
Go-
Did you have
no,
another?
go ahead and write.
Okay.
Where's the procedure?
Okay, any other discussions on?
Sam's still looking.
Yes.
Okay,
Hang on, I'm getting there. Oh, here, it was up near the front. Okay,
That was what he
John,
was
I'm going to preface this by,
So take your time.
I think this is what he already just.
Are you on the ordinance?
I am on the ordinance.
This was process, it was number 7.
Yeah, review process and,
Yeah,
what about it?
okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Okay, so let me let me give you a little analogy here before, as I
ahead.
get into this, so you understand where I'm coming from. Have you ever seen the ad on television? There's a little girl and there's a mother standing behind her and she's washing the dishes, and the little girl says, "My mother washes the dishes before she puts them in the dishwasher." And then there's a pause, and then the little girl says, "So what does the dishwasher do?" That's the question. Okay. So when I went through this, I'm looking at the this would have been section 6 process, review process, and then section 7, the hearing. And when I read this,
Wait, review process.
yeah,
Give me the section number.
Section number 6.
6.
Are you in the ordinance itself?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have that.
Oh,
I'm looking at my memo
Oh,
that specifically identified the ordinances that were being amended.
I don't know, does anyone have another?
So I'm
I've got
unprepared.
a clean copy of my
And this is
personal
my
copy.
memo of December 6,
Okay,
2018.
So he can just.
Yeah,
It had the amendments on 78, 61, 63.
Just so I'm clear, because this is my first meeting, has this policy gone before council and been approved
I thought
already?
it had, but
I
we'll
don't think
make
it
sure that
has.
we
I-
look at it.
I think we might hold off on
Oh,
it.
okay.
Then we'll get maybe his review and do it all at once.
Oh, I see. You're not in the ordinance, you're on the application still?
City of Clawson,
no,
yeah, that's it.
Yes, that's the policy to the application.
this is the policy for the signs.
special needs sign policy.
Okay.
Okay.
And the section is
Six.
6?
Yeah,
Review process? Okay, go
Right.
ahead.
okay. And so when I read through the review process, and it talks about that the police department will be the first reviewer. And the chief of police or his or her designee will review application to determine the criteria. If the criteria are met for the installation, if the application is complete and meets the criteria set forth in this policy, a field review will then be done, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm zeroing in on the criteria set forth in this policy and the criteria itself. So then if I go to section 7, right below it, called the hearing, okay, it says the complete application with documentation will be given to the Traffic and Safety Board for review and approval. The application review request will be placed on the agenda of the next regular scheduled meeting of the Traffic and Safety Board. If approved by Traffic and Safety Board, the request for the sign will be sent to Clawson City Council for the approval of a traffic control order for installation.
Okay.
So my question is, what does the dishwasher do? And it's because it sounds to me like this is almost redundant in the review process, that the police department is going to determine that all of the criteria is there and everything is set forth before they send that to us. So my question really is, what is it we're doing?
There could be any number of things that could be done. They may have criteria that might be different than the perspective you're having in connection with the application that's being made. This is on the criteria only, but they've got an application they're taking in that sets
Right.
forth the detail on that. That may frame other questions that are not necessarily the criteria, but in your mind, they're relevant to a decision you're being made. That's being made. That's my explanation.
Okay.
I mean, that's my understanding. You do a report, you do the investigation, you submit it to them.
And submit it to the
And
Traffic
then the
and Safety
person that's
Board.
applying also can submit information.
Well,
That's part of the-
I thought they were getting the application. They're going to review that entire application.
That's right, but I may come in and provide additional information, or provide additional information for them to submit in the report that hasn't been reviewed.
Or what I'm thinking of is if the request is asking for something that's possibly already a TOC that's currently existing, the police department can review that before it comes forward to us. So that way we're not reviewing something that might be contradicting then what's a current TOC on the books. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well,
And I'm
does there
looking
have to
at
be a-
this, that this is a basic format, but I'm looking at it that if I'm an advocate for someone that appears, or if they appear, they're going to provide as much information as they can to you to demonstrate the need for the particular sign. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go to the department in the first instance. It may be an afterthought. They may have an attorney who decides, here's what else you should consider. So I'm looking at this as literally
Gotcha.
a hearing, a substantive hearing, in which
Okay.
you have to make a factual determination.
Okay,
That's how I view this.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I apologize if I'm confusing you.
No, no,
That's not my intention.
No.
No, it's,
Although-
I mean, no, it's good that we're able to review this and look at stuff and get explanations. I originally thought that because when I watched the council meeting in which this policy was discussed, and when it came time for your report and your comments, you were very concerned about a person's rights under HEPA and some of those things that go on.
Absolutely.
And so I thought you would appear here anyways to kind of go through some of this with us, because this is a very first time and really out of our box.
Yeah, and I
to-
apologize for that, but I also know the intuitive sense of the members of this body. So I apologize for not appearing and making that assumption, but I still believe it exists. But I think we've clarified that, and you understand where I'm coming from. I'm looking at a broader picture as a basis of representing someone that really has a need for it. And there might be a bit of skepticism on it. Not saying police are skeptical, but some neighbors might be, who come in and don't want that signage because of certain reasons. It affects them if that sign were to go up. And that can happen as well. And that is thrown in the record too. So you only have ingredients from one source, and you have ingredients from other sources that may apply.
So basically what this does, we get the application, we do the site review and look at everything to see if everything fits. And then when it comes to the Traffic and Safety Board, they can come or a representative on their behalf to discuss further issues. Because all we're doing is looking at the application, seeing what the criteria fits or not, and then moving. I would think every application would come to Traffic and Safety
I would think so, too.
anyway.
Yeah.
And then if it's denied, there will be an appeal, and if it's approved, then we move forward with that. But otherwise, if they came here first, it would have to be tabled for a site review and then almost step back, so.
And that
But I
raises.
do understand where Sam's coming from. It seems like it's doubling up on
Right.
everything, but in the end, it may save us.
And that opens the door, too, to what kind of notice are you giving to the neighbors?
And they have a right then at a hearing, and it's
And
posted.
they have a right to appear and object. So if an application comes in, do you give notice to people like under the zoning law within 300 feet? That's in the Zoning Enabling Act, or do you do something less? Because, people are very expressive nowadays about how they feel and how they think and what they want to say and wanting to be heard. And I'm not faulting that, but I'm saying you've got to look at that as an expectation and an ingredient of today's society. And that's what you're doing. So that when your hearing is conducted, it is in fact a complete hearing. And everyone feels as though they've been heard. You may not have agreed with them, but they've been heard. That's the essence of it.
Okay. Okey-doke, that's all I had.
Okay, and then next on the agenda, any other discussions on that item?
So where's that at if it has not been sent?
No,
and approved by
I'm going to
council, or it
verify.
has?
What I'll do is I'll verify with Mike the special needs policy in its content has been distributed to council. If it hasn't, then everything will go to council in a package that will include, in fact, I may just do it without inquiring. I just may do it as an agenda memorandum that will have the special needs policy for their review and some explanation on how I explained it. The formatted braking ordinance and the formatted traffic and safety ordinance. And they'll have it all in one packet.
That's great, that'd be great.
I would suspect that probably will not be presented to them until February. I hate to say that, but, we're coming up to our second meeting this month, and I think we're going to have some meetings at the outset of February that are going to be somewhat critical on things. So I apologize for that. If I can get it earlier, I certainly will do so. But at least the council will have the packet early enough, and I can copy you my letter of enclosure so you're satisfied that I'm doing my due diligence and I'm following through on my representation.
Okay.
Okay.
You think you'd want to
That
put that for the second meeting in February?
Yeah, let's try it.
Instead of-
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay.
If that's okay with you, and I apologize. Let me say this also. Anytime you want me here, let the chief know, I'll be here.
Okay,
I mean, that's always been my responsibility for any organization here. That is my responsibility and dedication to my client. So it's your call. If you want Kinks up here, just say it.
okay.
And then
we
if
will.
you've got one more second, I think we had a quick question about the Traffic and Safety Board, the new ordinance,
We did, but I think that may have.
that his explanations previously might have
I
clarified
think-
the wording.
Yeah, because we were, the question was the sentence that you had put in there, act upon all requests necessitating special signage upon receipt of a complaint such as such request for such language. And I think you've already answered that with the other answers, so I think we can go ahead and take care of that too.
Okay. And for that one, last month, it wasn't motion to approve because we wanted that clarification of it. So to be able to go forward to city council,
Well, after Mr. Kinsep completes his package for us. and
do we
so-
need to do a motion that we approve, we
Yeah,
recommend to
you need
go
a
forward?
motion to approve everything and direct the city attorney to submit it to council in a package for consideration and adoption,
Okay.
presumably at the second meeting in February.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion?
What Mr. Kinsep just said. That's what I want my motion to be.
Oh, no, I took bad notes. Is there a second motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor of recommending that Mr. Kingstock bring forward to city council meeting tentatively for the second one in February, approval for the engine braking ordinance, the I don't have my copy.
Special needs sign policy.
The special needs sign policy and the traffic and safety board ordinance. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has passed. Okay, thank you. Next, under old business, is item C, 14 Mile and Main Street pedestrian crossing. Pat, do you want to provide an update on this item?
First, I didn't know if there was any questions. I know you guys got it pretty close to the last meeting. If you had time to digest it, I can answer any questions. I mean, as far as an update, following last meeting, you know, I had some conversations with Joan at the end of the meeting. One of her concerns is how to fund putting in push buttons. If we go with that route with putting in push buttons and doing a leading pedestrian interval. I did do some exploration. I sent an email up to the local agency safety engineer with MDOT Lansing. She provided me with some, you know, different method we could use to do a safety application. Usually when you do a safety application, you have a demonstrated crash problem, and then you offset the cost of the project by what you're going to save by reducing the crashes. Since we don't have a crash history, we'd have to do like a predictive model of what the benefit would be. But she gave me some, you know, background on that we could go that route. One of my other concerns with it would be the cost of the project. It'd be, you know, a pretty small project, and to go through the process to get a safety grant might be, you know, more burdensome than it's worthwhile for that small of a project. I was talking to the Road Commission for Oakland County about a different topic this week, and I asked them about, you know, if they would have a project, because it would be ideal to piggyback something like this on an existing signal project. Since the signal is wholly the city's jurisdiction and not split with the county, they wouldn't be too keen on doing that. They don't like to mix the sources, but Danielle at the Road Commission that I was talking to said, you know, maybe down the line we can work something out. One of the other things that would be ideal is to use their forces to install it. It would cut down on a lot of the paperwork at the construction end instead of going out to a contractor. So I guess still exploring that. As far as timing, if you were going to go with a safety grant too, the next call for projects wouldn't come out until August of this year, usually. And then you're looking at fiscal year 21 projects, so you wouldn't be starting anything until October of 2020.
So Joan really hasn't made a decision on all this information you've given her, the recent information yet?
No, I mean, the sense I got talking to her at the end of the meeting was, yes, she was in favor of that, if that's the best approach. I think that's the best way to provide some sort of mitigation for the pedestrian conflicts with not impacting the intersection greatly. So that would be, you know, what I'd recommend to do.
So,
We were a little bit, I wasn't understanding too much what Joan really wanted. She wanted some help from us, like backup on this project. You know, that's all we can give her. You know, we have no money, or we don't have any budget or anything like that. But I'm not quite sure what did she just want us to back her up? Is that all she said?
Well, I think part of the discussion she was having last time was she had some sort of planning grant that was funding the consultant, and the intent was to do a safety grant applications, I believe, last year. But since it's lapsed now, she doesn't think she has the funding for retaining the consultant to put together the grant application. That's something I'm happy to do. I mean, we do that for communities and done enough of them. But the other stuff that I've started discussing with people are some of the pitfalls I'd see of it. You know,
Right.
that it might be a $20,000 project, you're gonna get, $16,000 out of grant funding, you gotta come up with the other 4,000, then you gotta pay for engineering, then you gotta pay for, construction engineering, particularly if you go to a contractor and, go through all the hoops with the MDOT process, so, it might end up costing you just as much, doing it that way as, instead of paying for it and, working on an agreement with the road commissioner and having them do it as some other work.
Well, she had mentioned, I thought she had mentioned anyways, maybe it's me, that, she was looking for us, I think, to support her. She said she was out of money, and of course, we told her, we don't have any money either. But I think she was looking for a way to get this to the council. And we could certainly do that. We would take a vote, I guess, on the recommendations and the conclusions, approve something, and then forward that. I would write a letter and forward that to the council for their information, I guess, really at this point, because I don't know what else.
Consideration.
Yeah, because we
Consideration,
yeah,
yeah.
because we had in the minutes from last meeting, the members advised Mr. Horton to make a future request at the next Traffic and Safety Board meeting to make a recommendation to City Council for a proactive approach to be prepared for future grants to improve pedestrian safety at the intersection. So I think we were waiting for Joanne to come back, because she's probably trying to figure out maybe possibly what ways does the DDA want to go, and then us bringing it up at the next, she comes forward, and then we do a motion to be able to go forward to City Council then.
And since that's wholly a whole, city intersection there, we don't share that at all with the county, correct?
Yeah, I was under the impression that part of it was county,
Yeah.
but they just maintain it.
So it's
But
covered,
it is all city
solely by the
jurisdiction.
city, that I think maybe Harry Drinkwine would be involved somehow with that type of a project.
Yeah, I would imagine that the council would probably go to him and say,
Right. So,
here's a request, and we're considering this, and give us your,
right, so it almost behoove her to make that maybe presentation to the council to get them to make some, maybe a direction or a request that way. I mean, obviously, this board doesn't have the funding to move on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know how the process would work here as far as a capital improvements plan either, if there's
that would
a,
have to be put in the budget, in the regular.
yeah, I mean, if it's
City
something
budget.
that's added to the plan but doesn't have funding identified, yeah, I don't know how you guys work your plan. That's something I've seen before.
And I can talk to her tomorrow. I mean, she's not here tonight, but I can pass that on to her tomorrow, what we discussed.
Yeah, I think maybe, I think maybe it sounds like is continuing to work the issue, so maybe we should just let her work the issue. And then if she needs to come back to us, let her come back to us at some point with a more specific request.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Any further discussion on the item? I think that would be helpful.
No, I think we just,
Okay, we're going to talk to her again to make sure what is in her head.
well, the chief is,
Yeah, I'll let her
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for coming tonight.
hey, Pat, I did have a couple questions though for you. This isn't to pass it, but I just wanted to make sure of what we were saying here. You write in foreign tongue, and so the conclusion really was first of all, we're not going to do the one where all the traffic stops in all directions and so on. You said that was really not conducive to our kind of situation. We're
Right.
not big enough to do that. And I agreed with that. But then we talked about the left turn situation and also the right turn. we could do the left turn, but if you just did the left turn phasing, then it wouldn't help you with right turn at all. So it sounded like we needed to put push buttons on the columns. And then I would think that we would want to do, because I watched that intersection, I watched the lights, and when the light turns green, the walk sign also comes on at the same time, and there is no lead time. So you're talking about lead time of 4 seconds to get you into the
4 to
first lane.
7, I think it said.
Huh?
4 to 7 seconds.
Yeah, well, 4 seconds to the first lane. And then also, I would think that we would need to have the safety of the left turn, so people
Yeah.
would cross before the left turn.
Yeah, and that's what the push button would be helpful for too. I mean, it runs that way some of the time now. It's flexible, but it really doesn't know if there's a pedestrian there or not. So if there's a pedestrian that, if there's a push button there with a call, it can hold that left turn so it doesn't conflict.
And so, but also, it would, but it wouldn't be all the time. So only when the button was activated, would it stop the left turn lane scenario?
Yeah, that would be my thought. Like I say, now it flexes, so sometimes it runs that, when it runs split phase where it's just running the straight through and the left turn at the same time. It won't conflict with that ped, or it'll keep that ped on that leg off. If it's running where, north and south, say, are running at the same time, then you could have that left turn conflict. Right now, it has no way of knowing without the push buttons whether there's a pedestrian there or not, so.
Okay.
Okay, we're good on that.
So we're looking for all three things. We're looking for the delay, the lead time, we're looking for the left turn, and we're looking for the buttons.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the button to me, is critical for the other two.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion on that item?
Done.
Okay, we are underneath new business. Mr. Johnson, if you want to come forward.
I just had some concerns of semi-trucks and big commercial vehicles driving through the neighborhood into the industrial park across in Troy. I know they banned the right turn at 14 in Main, so I don't know if they're cutting through the neighborhood or where exactly the traffic's coming from, but I did notice like an uptick in semis and other trucks kind of going through the neighborhood. So I was wondering if there's any, or what was that?
Like hours by chance, like?
Most of the time during the day, a couple of times during the morning.
So they're going obviously eastbound into the industrial, running down Park, crossing Livernois and going into,
Correct.
That section,
And
okay.
a couple of times they're coming the other way as well.
Okay, so in either times it's going eastbound or westbound on Park? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's one of the narrower streets too, so.
And which street is this?
Park,
Park.
yeah.
I'll address that
Okay.
with some extra patrol issues. Was it morning and daytime, no nighttime rush hour type stuff, or is it, think it's when business hours when they're open?
That's what it looked like to me, but
Okay.
I'll have to keep a log.
All right. We'll do a little focus on that and then.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully it cures the problem.
Yeah,
But yeah, thanks for bringing it to my attention.
yeah.
anyway.
Well, that's all I had, so thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other discussions for new business?
I'll make them quick.
Okay.
One is, Sam and I were wondering about an annual report to council of the things that we've accomplished this year. And we have quite a bit of information so that we could probably get it pretty much ready. And I'm not talking about an in-depth, just listing, what things that we've had come before us and how we've taken care of what we could take care of. And perhaps the rest of the board could send in anything they have or remember that they would like to see on that. And we'll compile it and try to have it for, what do you think? Can we have it for the next meeting, maybe?
The next meeting's Tuesday.
It's a little fast.
You mean our next
Yeah,
meeting?
our
Oh, I thought you meant their next meeting.
Oh,
I'm like,
no, no,
wow,
no,
that's
no.
Tuesday.
No, no. I gotta say, wait a minute, we got another meeting on Tuesday.
Like, whew.
So anyway, it was just a question I had for the board in general, if they thought they would like to do that and have that. I know the other boards do usually have a end-of-the-year report that they put into to the council, so we don't have to decide tonight, or if you'd like us to work on it, we'll be happy to, if you think it's a good idea.
If you want to. Go ahead.
Have at it, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's what she said.
All right, and our other thing was your thing on that you wanted to.
Oh, I have some new business, Madam Chairman.
She says, oh, no, Sam, it's Sam's new business.
I would like to know what the board would think about adding into our agenda a slot for the police chief's report, in which that would give him an opportunity and us also an opportunity to hear what's going on as far as what concerns us in traffic and safety. I know a lot of times, in the past anyways, there were a lot of things that were taken care of in whatever, and it's like, maybe we should actually make a slot for the chief and say, you would just add in there and it would say, roll call, introduction of guests, approval of the minutes, and then you might have police chief's report, just like city manager's report or attorney's report, or that the council does.
And if
So,
the chief has anything, that's his time. If he doesn't, he just says no report this month.
yeah, it just says no
That's,
report.
that's a simple thing, not an issue.
Yeah.
So if the board would like to,
That way they can again
that.
think about it.
Yeah.
This is just suggestions we had this week.
you could just add it under new business, and then we can talk about it at the next,
Okay.
people can think about it. Do we have anything else? I don't think so.
I don't think we have anything else.
Okay, and then I had two new items just to bring up. I think I'm on D now. D, intersection of, I think it's, Phillips and Washington. Is that kitty corner to the tennis courts by the middle school?
Correct.
I've heard some discussion about people concerned about pedestrian crossing in there, and it only having two stop signs instead of a four-way stop in that location.
Correct.
I think before I became on the board, and Pam's not here tonight, Pam's been on the board longer, I think there might have been a traffic safety or traffic study done.
I'm pretty sure there's been at least one, if not two, for the Phillips Washington, trying to make that a four-way stop. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
It sounds familiar.
Oh,
They've done one, at least two, and it was the fact that if they were to put up a four-way stop there, and correct me if I'm wrong if this sounds incorrect, Pat, but the speeds would then increase in between stop signs.
because people would speed up to try to make in between.
So they would make up their, so if they put a four-way stop
Okay,
there, they
so
would stop,
that'd be fine.
and then the speeds would increase going to the next stop sign. So with the amount of traffic through that study, and I don't even know what year it was, I know it's been addressed more than once, that it was left the way it was, and that's why those signs are put up that says cross-traffic does not stop. And those are posted, currently on the signs.
Okay. Is there any way to get a copy of that, just for next meeting?
I could dig.
Just a copy of that?
I mean, it's got to be somewhere. If
Okay.
it's not with us, it's with TIA, but we can dig those studies up and those findings. That's
Okay.
not an issue.
I just wanted to see when I
When the
vaguely
last one was.
remember this, but when the last report was done.
And I think that was a reasoning, one of the reasons not to put up that four-way.
Okay.
And we had a question about the signs at Madison and Custer. They were supposed to be installed. Was that our last meeting or the one before?
Same thing, is that
Below the stop signs, cross-traffic does not stop.
so that's exactly what's at Phillips and,
Yeah, it's an offset though, and that was,
I
we
don't-
had
I don't know.
TIA did a study on that and recommended that we put additional signage there.
So we're just not sure if the DPW installed the signs yet.
I'll check if there was no order placed and they weren't. I'm pretty sure if there was an order, asked to be done, it was probably done, but I'll double check that intersection tomorrow,
Okay, that's great.
just to make sure that it was covered. That's not an issue.
A, B, C, D, E. And then, probably, the other item I just want to bring up is meeting minutes going forward. I know previously Chief Anderson did the meeting minutes. I know my minutes are minor notes are kind of scratched in place, but I'm not sure how we want to go forward with meeting minutes, getting them created and then be able to get posted on the city's website for publication, and then also have them available for our meetings monthly going forward. So I just wanted to bring up discussion of possible options that we can go forward with.
Well, I know that we have, I've sat through at least 2 sessions where we have picked officers and asked for a secretary, and no one will volunteer to do the secretary's job. I did have a conversation with Mark Pollock before he left and asked about having one of the girls from the office do the minutes. And he said, well, his question was, well, do they have to attend the meeting? And I said, no. He said, well, if they could do during the day, if they could go in and watch the replay of the meeting and take the minutes, that might be a doable thing. He left. I think we scared him off. So I don't know where that sits, but that was one possibility. Other than that, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I had talked to John Kingsep today because I didn't to fully understand my role on the board as well, and he was clear that it wouldn't be my responsibility for that. That's why I asked and addressed it. He says, as an ex officio member, I mean, I'm not appointed to the board as you folks are. So he said it should be either someone that is appointed, or if you can find a city employee who's willing to watch the meetings and do the minutes for you. But I would help out if you need help. And he even said the agenda should be drafted through the board. Everyone throw ideas, and then whatever they want on the agenda, present it that way. He said my responsibility is basically research, working with TIA, working with the other city governments. I mean, just so you know, I'm new to this too, and so I wanted to know exactly what my role was.
Well,
was
Pam's
on it.
not here tonight. We could just elect her secretary.
We could vote for her and say she's when you miss the meeting, that's what happens.
That happened 2 years ago, and I became chair. I was on vacation. So, okay, I guess maybe more follow-up or discussions about how we can get the meeting minutes created from this meeting, and then figure out a process of going forward at the next meeting when Pam's here.
Yeah, because right now we wouldn't have, we won't have any minutes.
Okay.
The city halls, I mean, short-staffed on there. They lost a staff member as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm sure Victoria's probably can't take any more onto her
Well,
workload.
and see, that was,
I don't
that
see
was
that
before
happening.
all of that happened, so
So, yeah, John thought it was on the boards. Someone on the board should be in charge of that, but I guess that would be up to you guys.
We have a much smaller board than most of the boards, so there's usually 10, 12 people, and somebody normally says, oh, I can be,
Yeah.
yeah.
But when you look at the other boards, in all honesty, most of them, there's nobody that sits on the board that takes the minutes.
No, just, I think,
They
recreation.
elected a secretary last night for the planning commission, and somebody said, well, what does the planning commission do? And they said, well, he basically just signs
Sign.
documents and a couple of other things.
But he doesn't
But
take
there's
the
another
minutes.
person who takes the minutes.
Most of the other places have somebody that does minutes, most of the other boards. But I think that The only one we saw that did not have was recreation.
Recreation, they take their own minutes.
Yeah. But anyway.
We do as well on the Booster Club board. We have a secretary that takes our minutes, presents them at the meeting.
Yeah.
You
Well-
think you could have her come on Thursday nights and?
Why do you say her? It's a him, Sam.
Is it a him? Really?
There is an opening on the board still. Wait, is there? With our numbers?
Yes,
No.
I believe. Yeah,
No, there won't be.
There's not an opening? One, no.
No.
'Cause
When
the
we-
chief
The
doesn't
chief, the
count.
chief takes the one.
Well, I think his wife sits on planning, so I think they're busy enough as it is between the Booster Club and planning for that family, so.
Okay. Okay, any other discussions under new items?
I don't think so.
I think that's enough.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the one thing I did have is Parks and Rec requested a special spot at the city park for their attendants. When they leave to go lock the bathrooms over on Grant, when they come back on summer nights, there's not parking for them, so be drafting a traffic control order so they can have a spot that's just marked for park attendants only.
You can do that? You can take care of it?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't have to worry about it. You're going to just
I just wanted to, yep, add it.
put your foot out there and tell them what to do.
TEFG. Okay, any other discussions for new business?
Nope.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
And I'll second.
Okay.
I think we did all of them.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay.